go because I'm playing a set with Della May in 15 minutes at the Masters tent. So it's a dance party. We're letting Celia off her leash and we're gonna throw it down. So after this, you know where to find me.
Kimber Ludifer, everybody, she's gotta go.
Kimber Ludifer. Brian, I know nothing about your earliest history. I remember a funny story you told me about you and Kenny Baker when you were a little boy.
Indeed. Yeah.
I don't remember, is it for public consumption or is it? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to hear my Kenny Baker story? All right. So, I come from Minnesota. Yeah, you know, and of course, you heard of my state? We have a dysfunctional government right now. There is no government actually right now, as I left. Yeah, right. Minnesota, New York, Belgium,
We
the Congo.
invented dysfunctional government.
Anywho. Anyway, you get the idea, right? So when I was done, he said, "Well, you ain't no Byron Berline." But... So then I saw him play. For the first time I saw him live, and he played with these elegant, wonderful, silky bow strokes. And then, I said, wow, that's totally different. When he came off stage, I said, "Kenny, do you ever use a shuffle?" And he said, "Son, I think that people that use a shuffle have a long way to go."
Didn't he say something about...
And so I realized how much work I had ahead of me. And I was brought down to the very, it's Brian about that size. And as I was sauntering off to the car to drive back home, I saw him over at the table and I thought, should I say goodbye or not? I thought, okay. So I walked over to the record table and I said, "Well, I'm going back to Minnesota, Kenny." He said, "Son, come over here." And I walked over and he put his arm around me and he said to the banjo player, Blake Williams, in his band, he said, "Blake, you know what I'm going to do with this boy?" I said, "No, Kenny, what you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to take this boy and I'm going to bring him to my farm and I'm going to teach him to be a boxer." So I went home completely depressed. For 3 months, I didn't come out of my room, and I figured I was either going to get better or I was going to quit. And I worked really hard. And so went back to Bean Blossom later on the next summer, and I had about 20 Kenny Baker tunes memorized. And I heard his fiddle from way off far away in the campground. His sound was so incredible. And you could tell his fiddle from, way on the other side of the campground. It was about midnight. And I heard him playing, and I grabbed my fiddle. I can't believe I did this. I sprinted over, and there were about 30 people all in a circle with Kenny and a guitar player in the center. And I jumped right in the middle, looking for abuse. And he said, "What you got?" I said, "The ball and chain hornpipe. This is one that you wrote, Kenny." And I nailed it. And after that, he was super kind. And so a little tough love made all the difference for this little Minnesota boy.
I feel like this has turned into like a tough love parenting workshop here. Something like that. I don't know ball and chain hornpipe. How does that go? Do you remember?
I forgot. But let's do that.
Oh, great.
Yeah, this is one Grassy Fiddle Blues. You know this tune. This is a Kenny Baker tune that's killer diller with all these nasty double stops that are really fun. And Matt has this really cool, at least you did 5 years ago, double stop version of harmony. So let's all do that one, and Mike rips this one up too.
Let's see.
We'll miss you, Kenny. We love you. Wherever you are.
Do we have time for one more Kenny Baker story?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, when I was learning how to play, I was a teenager. I was around a guy in Louisville who was Benny Martin's cousin. And Benny Martin and Kenny Baker were two of my biggest heroes. And so I used to talk to this guy, Benny's cousin, who'd been around all the great fiddle players, because I had heard Kenny Baker play on records and on live shows. I had a few of those, but I never really had seen him play live. And the same goes with a lot of these other guys. And I would talk to this guy, and I'd quiz him about all these different fiddle players, And I was talking to him on the phone one time, and I said, "Man, what about Kenny Baker? God, he sure is smooth, And he said, "Yeah, Kenny Baker, man, he gets up there with Monroe, and he nails them double stops, and he nails all them licks. Never cracks a smile, just straight face, just stands there, straight face throughout the whole thing." Well, I remembered that, and a few years later, this other friend of mine from Indiana asked if I was going to go to Bean Blossom that year. He said, "You need to go to Bean Blossom. Kenny Baker, Josh Graves are playing at Bean Blossom. I want you to meet Kenny Baker." And I said, "All right. Yeah, how is Kenny Baker? Is he an all right guy, or what's the deal with him? I heard he never smiled." And he said, "Oh, that ain't true. He smiles, So we talked a little more about it, and I didn't think nothing of it, Then we got over to Bean Blossom, and Kenny and Josh Graves played their first set. Kenny was playing as good as he ever did, just nailing everything, And then after the set, my buddy said, "Come on over here. They're in Josh's station wagon. I want you to meet Kenny." And so I go over there, and Dave said, "Kenny, this is the boy I was telling you about. This is Michael Cleveland here." Kenny said, Yeah, you're that boy that said I never smiled." And then there was this one other quick story, and we'll get back to I'm sorry to hold up the show, but there's this one other story. I was going to watch him do a workshop one time. He was doing a workshop at Bean Blossom, and I went over before the workshop to say hi. And he said, "Son, why don't you get up here and do this workshop? I don't want to do it. I said, well, Kenny, you got to do the workshop. Your name's on the bill. He said, well, this is his exact words. Well, by hell, I don't like doing workshops. And why don't you get up here and go do that workshop for me? I said, man, I'll do it with you. But you got to do it, And so I'd sit up there with him, and anytime anybody would ask him about a tune, Kenny, what about Bluegrass in the Backwoods, or what about Lonesome Moonlight Waltz? He'd go, son, play Lonesome Moonlight Waltz. I thought, oh God, talk about being under the gun. Anyway, that's my Kenny Baker story.
And now we have more. This is going to turn into the Kenny Baker story hour because I thought of two.
Yeah.
This one is a serious one. When I was younger, I remember playing opening act in a band in New York City for Bill Monroe when they came to New York, and Kenny Baker was backstage, and I was this ratty hippie, and I came up to him, and he was so dapper, beautiful, wearing a beautiful suit, and wearing a beautiful hat and everything, and we were listening to some guy play old-time fiddle, and he said to me, I never wanted to play like that. I always wanted to play like Joe Venuti and Stefan Grappelli, which is really amazing because it shows you this persistence in bluegrass fiddle of this heritage from swing and jazz violin, because Chubby Wise, the first bluegrass fiddler, was a swing fiddler, and all of this beautiful smoothness that comes into bluegrass through Kenny Baker was inspired by Joe Venuti, the first great jazz violinist, and Stefan Grappelli, the second great jazz violinist. So certainly there's something in the fiddling that's bifurcated, which always reminds me of that quote from Benny Martin where he said, when you're playing bluegrass fiddle, you're on a line between jazz and bluegrass. One of the great Zen quotes. But Kenny Baker was famous, when I asked Brian to play on the big Kenny Baker tribute, he said he'd come and wear his prosthetic ears, because Kenny Baker was very famous for having really large ears. And that's a necessary predicate to this next story. My friends Jay Unger and Molly Mason were watching a documentary about Bill Monroe's music, and Kenny Baker came on, and he's recounting the early times. He says, I was in a place and I heard Bill Monroe's music, and when I heard it, I couldn't believe my ears. And Molly Mason turned around and said, we can't believe them either. Couldn't believe your ears. We can't believe them either. Okay, well... you got to tell how you got into fiddle. How did I get into fiddle? I took up the fiddle much later than everyone else, and it still is a problem for me. I took up the fiddle when I was 13 years old. I come from a classical music family. My mother was an opera singer, and she wouldn't swing if you hung her from a chandelier, as we used to say. But she was a great opera... but she knew all the words to jazz tunes and things like that. And I grew up... My father turned me on to all kinds of great black music, Mahalia Jackson, Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee, Miles Davis, Lester Young, Billie Holiday. So I grew up in a household where my mother was listening to opera and my father was listening to this other kind of stuff. And we lived in New York City, and I was 13. I turned on the radio, and I heard this amazing fiddle sound, and it turned out to be Tex Logan, the great Tex Logan, playing Kill the Shanghai Rooster. You remember that? And it was like late at night, it was on the radio. It was one of those moments, like everyone else is talking about, where you realize your life will never be the same. I was like, what is that sound? That is unbelievable. So my parents got me a fiddle for my 13th birthday. And I wanted to play country music and bluegrass, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I lived in New York City. And I went into Manhattan to study with a guy named John Burke, who was a banjo player, who also became Mark O'Connor's first teacher. And a few years ago, I met this guy, John Burke, again. I said, when I was younger, I was a student of yours, and Mark O'Connor was a student of yours. And he said, yeah, I know Mark O'Connor. I'm not familiar with you. So that was similarly demoralizing to me. Everyone has a demoralizing story. I also took lessons with the great jazz violinist. I took 2 lessons with the great jazz violinist Joe Venuti, and I played for him. He was an imposing guy, a big Italian mafia guy. And he hit my hand with his bow, and he said, "You're lost. You don't know where the blank you are." So that was scary also for me. I'm just giving you a psychological profile of why I'm such a disturbed individual. Not that if you have to ask for forgiveness before you play, it's not a good sign, I don't play well, but here's the reason why. One thing I thought we could all do is maybe play on a blues a little bit, because blues is something that's always been of interest to me. And swing music is, I consider myself a swing fiddle player, and blues is really a big part of bluegrass and also a big part of swing music. So maybe I'll start by playing a little bit swing blues in E with these guys, and we can all join in. To play the blues for you. Brian's got the Kenny Baker Doesn't Like Me blues. The Kenny Baker Doesn't Like Me Blues, spontaneously composed by poor people who were dissed by Kenny Baker at various times. Well, any questions? Any fiddle players in the audience? Any people who fiddle players want to play? Rosie Columbus? Okay. 1, 2.